Jockeying, an aspect of any FIFA that will truly determine your skill as a defender. This can mean the difference between your opponent not even being able to turn, let alone breathe, or having your defense leave too many gaps and too many holes.
It's like the third time!
I mean, as Harry Maguire once said,
I'm a defender defensively. If it was too open.
I mean, do you want to end up like Harry?
Harry Maguire!
Probably not. So in that case, of course, your boy has got you covered. This is a complete guide to jockeying and minimizing gaps in the defense, and in general, just defending better in FIFA 23. First of all, what not to do when jockeying in FIFA 23. What I've noticed is when you just hold L2 when you're jockeying in FIFA 23, it's similar to 22. It's way too slow to react to the movements of the attacker. Of course, if you hold just R2 as well, you're more prone to overcommitting in the defense. So in that case, the way you should jockey in FIFA 23 is of course the L2 R2 jockeying technique, which is the speed jockey technique. This technique I find allows you to react to the movements of the attacker a lot quicker, and you're able to readjust a lot quicker compared to just the L2 technique or the R2 technique, which, as I said, you're more prone to overcommitting. The L2 R2 technique will be the primary technique that you guys will need to use with the majority of the tips in this tutorial. So take note and use L2 R2. I quickly just want to summarize jockeying in FIFA 23. Quote me on this, and if you have to write it down, do so. In FIFA 22, it was easier to overcommit, but it was also easier to readjust. In FIFA 23, it is harder to overcommit, but it is also harder to readjust. Why is this, might you ask? Well, simply because the L2 R2 jockeying technique is not as touchy to the left stick. So when you're moving with the player, he's not going to move as far to the movements that you point with the left stick compared to FIFA 22. And I'm sure you guys have noticed this. When you're jockeying, the player doesn't move across the pitch as quick compared to last year. So in that case, it's a lot harder to overcommit, but it's also harder for you guys to readjust. This means you should take note, and in the next few segments, learn these techniques to prevent you guys from overcommitting in the first place. Minute versus heavy movements. You're probably thinking, what the bloody hell is this guy on about? Well, minute movements. What do I mean by that? Essentially, when you're jockeying close to a defender, I recommend when you're moving side to side and attempting to read where he is going to go, that you hold the left stick very minutely, not heavy. And what I mean by heavy is essentially, heavy is when you're literally flicking the stick all the way. This is what you use when you're further away from a defender and you're trying to cover large amounts of space. You move it so it clits. You move it all the way, so it's a heavy movement. A minute movement, however, is very light, and it's similar to how you want to dribble this year in FIFA 23. Essentially, when you're close to that defender, use minute movements. What this essentially does is allow you to keep in line with him and, of course, not overcommit past him, because if you hold it all the way, as I said, you're more prone to overcommitting and going further into the direction that you're pointing. And of course, this tutorial is going to flow for you guys. The next segment I'm going to talk to you about is defending in one-on-one situations. It takes into account the minute and heavy movements on the left stick. Essentially, when you're defending and you're essentially trying to line up with that defender, he might be running down the wing and you're attempting to try and jockey with him and get that tackle in. I recommend when you're attempting to try and get closer to him and you're relatively far away, that you use L2 and R2 with a heavy movement on the stick, pointing in that direction. But as you get closer to him, or let's say the defender, or let's say the attacker stops on the spot, or he performs a skill move, what you want to do is then hold the left stick minutely to the direction of where he's going to go to prevent you from overcommitting too far, which essentially allows you guys to line yourself up and get that tackle. Another technique that I want to teach you guys is something that I taught in my coaching academy last year. It's an actual technique that I created with the jockeying technique to essentially prevent ourselves from overcommitting and going too far past the defender. When there are situations when the attacker is running one-on-one with you and he is attempting to beat you, what I recommend is, if you guys aren't confident that you're lined up enough to actually make that tackle, don't go in and do it. What I do is a technique called resetting to line up. I'll go towards him, but once I know that I'm not confident enough to actually get that tackle in, I will come back slightly as a reset to then make sure I am confident enough that I'm lined up to make that tackle. So I go on approach, I then come back a bit, and then I approach him again. So it's more of a approach with a heavy movement, minute movement, then I realize I don't actually have the ability to line up, come back with a heavy movement, and then approach with a minute movement again. This is the resetting and then lining up again to allow us to make the tackle in FIFA 23. Pouncing on the opponent. What a technique this is, and it's pretty much an advanced technique in terms of defending. I wouldn't expect your lower tier players to actually know this or perform this particularly well, but that's why I'm here, aren't I? You know, so yeah. But yeah, pouncing on the opponent. Essentially what this is when you are tracking a run or covering space, you are waiting for a large touch to be made with the attacker for you to pounce on it. And you can tell this by the way the opponent is acting. If he is sprinting and he holds it for at least a second or two, it pretty much means he's going to continue holding it into the space that's available in front of him. So a good technique is to essentially use the L2R2 jockeying technique to cover the space or cover the runner, and then once he takes that next touch, which will be larger because he's holding sprint, you then pounce. You hold jockey, L2R2, to cover the space, cover the player, cover the runner, and then let go of L2. Sprint towards him, and as you approach, literally smash him, just as much as speed did to KSI. You can use the tackle button, or you can use the slide tackle button. This will essentially allow you guys to catch your opponent off guard and get that tackle in once he takes that large touch. Covering passing lanes. Of course, this is super vital in FIFA 23, and what I've noticed is actually a lot easier to intercept this year. I find the AI in itself is a lot better in intercepting passes, but even manually, if you're controlling a defender, if you're covering passing lanes, it's a lot easier to intercept. Now, there's actually a technique that I like to do, and that is basically forcing the opponent into the pass. When I'm covering passing lanes, what I'll do is I'll approach the attacker on the ball, but I'll slowly come back just a little bit. Me approaching him makes him think, oh, he's coming towards me, I need to do something. I need to pass, or I need to do a steal move. The majority of the time they'll pass, and what it does is sort of bait him into making a pass to give up the ball in the midfield, and essentially you can then start your counter attack. Just quickly, if you want a more in-depth tutorial on the majority of these tips that I'm giving you, I have a complete defending tutorial on the channel as well. You can go and check that out. I delve more into covering passing lanes in that tutorial. We then have the mother or father of all techniques. That is the zigzag jockeying technique. I did a tutorial on this just a few days ago, did quite well, you guys loved it. I have to obviously add it into this. It's a complete guide to jockeying, we have to, am I correct? The zigzag jockeying technique is something that I taught my clients in the coaching academy that I run. Now, if you want one-on-one coaching and learn new things, secrets that I know that no one else knows, and essentially to get better at FIFA, then of course check that out, the link is down below. But what I want to say about the zigzag jockeying technique is this allows us to line the defender up. It also allows us to not overcommit. And that's one of the biggest mistakes people do, is they overcommit. Now with the zigzag jockeying technique, I created it specifically to counter this issue. What it is essentially you moving back and forward slightly, minutely, with the left stick as you are slowly approaching the attacker. It allows you to zigzag slightly, line yourself up, and prevent you from going too far past the attacker to one of the sides. The other thing it does is it allows us to be ready with our thumb. If we're slowly but surely moving the left stick back and forwards to line ourselves up, our thumb is exercising and it is ready to pounce to a specific side that the attacker goes when he does. And I find it's a very, very effective technique for this. People adapted to this very well in my academy last year, and it's been released this year. So I hope you enjoy that, and of course, I hope you enjoyed this complete jockeying tutorial. It is the end of it. I hope you enjoyed it, and of course, follow me on Instagram. The link is down below. You can keep in touch with the No Money Spent road to an event. I literally vlog my whole experience as a pro player, and I take you through the ins and outs of my diet, gym, seeing a sports psychologist, playing the game, whatever it is. It is the ultimate road to glory in FIFA 23. Subscribe and keep posted with that series. But as always, I hope you have a good day. I'm out. Sayonara. Au revoir. Adios. Salam. Ciao. Goodbye.